Hi guys, today we're going to be talking about multiplying matrices. So in order to multiply matrices, we need to make sure the inner dimensions are the same. So that's our first rule that we need to make sure that we are able to evenly multiply the matrices. So meaning the first matrice's number of columns is the same as the second matrice's number of rows. So let's look at this below. So we have A times B, and A being a matrix and B being a matrix. And A has 2 rows and 3 columns. So that 3 is what matters. And then matrix B has 3 rows and 3 columns. So this number right here is the important one. So because those 3's are the same, we can multiply that matrices, and we are allowed to. So let's look at our first example. So we have this matrix, and I'm going to label them A and B. So matrix A has 1 row and 3 columns. Matrix B has 3 rows and 1 column. So we can say that because these are the same, we are allowed to multiply them. So that brings us to our next thought. Well, how do we multiply matrices in the first place? Well, let's get into that. So when we multiply matrices, it's kind of like we want to do the first with the first. So we're going to do the first column with the first row. So that's going to be 2 times 3. Alright, and then we'll do the second with the second. So the second column with the second row. So that's going to be -3 times 5. And then we're going to do the third with the third. So we're going to do the third column with the third row. So then that's going to be -1 times -2. So then you're going to take these numbers and you're going to add them all together once you multiply them. So we're going to have 6 plus -15 plus 2. And then we add them all together and we get -9 and -7. So then what do we do with this -7? Well, now this -7 is the multiplied matrix. So it's kind of like this was all in a matrix and all that. And one way to figure out what your new matrix is going to look like is if we look at this number. So those other numbers from the original dimensions actually do have use to them. They give you the new dimensions of the multiplied matrix. So it's going to be a 1 by 1. Well, we have our 1 by 1. Alright, so now let's do something where it's not just a 1 by 1, it's going to be a 2 by 3 and a 3 by 3. So my first matrix, I'm going to label it A, is going to be a 2 rows by 3 columns, and then matrix B is going to be 3 rows by 3 columns. Now I got to check those inner dimensions, and they are the same, so we are allowed to multiply them. Okay, so let's expand this just a little bit so that we can understand it. So what's going to happen is we're going to have this new matrix, and our first element is going to be the first times the first, or we can say the first row times the first column. So that's our first element. So I'm going to rewrite it, and it's going to be 1, -2, -1 times our B, which is 2, -1, 1. So that's how we're going to rewrite each element, as these little 1 by 1s for each new element of the multiplied matrix. So let's do our second one. So our second element next is going to be the first row times the second column. So we're going to have 1, -2, -1 times, or the dot product of 0, 3, -3. So that's our second element. So then the last one for this row is going to be again the first row times the third column. Okay? So that's 1, -2, -1 times -5, -2, 4. Alright? So now I want you to do the second row on your own. So you're going to do the second row, which is 0, 3, 2, times each of the columns of the matrices. So you just have to write it. You don't have to do any math right now. So pause the video here and do it. So if you did your second row correctly, this is what it should have turned out to look like. So now we can do this. This is a lot easier to do a bunch of 3 by 1s or 1 by 3s, multiplying them, and just like that first example. So we can do that a lot easier. And we should get a 2 by 3 matrix. So just like before, we're going to have our 1 times 2. So 1 times 2. Well, 1 times 2 is 2 plus -2 times -1. And that's going to be 2. And then we have our last one of 1 times -1. And that's going to be -1. Okay? And then our next one. So we have 1 times 0. That's going to be 0. Then we have -2 times 3. That's going to be 6. And then we have -3 times -1, which is going to be +3. And then our next one. Again, 1 times -5. That's going to be -5. Then we have -2 times -2. It's going to be +4. And then we're going to have 4 times -1. That's going to be -4. Okay? Now with that same idea, I want you to do the second row. So you can do 0 times 2, 3 times -1, all that fun stuff. So try that on your own. Pause the video here and try row 2. So if you did this second row correctly, I'll show you. You should have gotten those 3. And I didn't do any math yet, so you're just, well, you're multiplying the numbers, but you don't have to add them or subtract them yet. So you should have those 3 parentheses. So now our last step, we're going to simplify these parentheses. So then we're going to do 2 plus 2 minus 1. 2 plus 2 is 4, minus 1 is 3. 0 plus 6 plus 3, 9. -5 plus 4, which is -1. -1 minus 4 is -5. 0 minus 3 plus 2, -1. 0 plus 9 minus 6, 3. 0 minus 6 plus 8, 2. So if you did this correctly, we should have a 2 by 3 matrix with those elements. Alright, so then, what if we tried to multiply the other way around for example 2? Well, it would be a 3 by 3 matrix by a 2 by 3 matrix. And remember what he said about those inner dimensions? They have to match. So because they do not match, this is undefined. So please make sure you are following that first step and making sure that you can actually multiply the matrices in the first place. Okay? So because we can't, just multiply the other way around, this means that matrix multiplication is not commutative. Please excuse that pronunciation. But matrix multiplication is associative. And so what that means is that when we multiply A times B and then multiply C, that's the same as doing A times B times C. Yeah. So, and then we have matrix multiplication is distributive. So what that means is that if we have C and we're adding A plus B, and then so we have A plus B in the parentheses, and then we have C on the outside, that means it will equal C times A plus C times B. And this can also mean if we had A plus B times C on the outside, we will get A times C plus B times C. Okay? But you have to be careful about applying the distributive property, because remember, this is not the same as this. So remember, we have these two, but they are not equal to each other. They mean totally different things. So be careful of that, okay? So let's just do one more together, and then we will be done. So for this one, we have A and B. We need to find A, B. So A is a 2 by 3, and B is a 3 by 2. So those inner dimensions match, the 3 and the 3, so we are allowed to multiply them. So we have negative 1, 4, 2, 0, 3, 5 times 5, negative 4, 2, negative 1, 0, 3. So we're going to do like we did before. We kind of have to rewrite this a little bit. So we're going to have our row multiplying by each column. So we're going to do negative 1, 2, 3 multiplied by 5, negative 4, 2 for that element, and then we have negative 1, 2, 3 multiplied by 5, negative 4, 2. So knowing how to do that, you do the second row. So you're going to do 4, 0, and 5 times each column, okay? So this is what your matrix should look like, and I realized as I was doing the work myself, this was wrong, but I fixed it, okay? So make sure you write that down right. Alright, so now we're going to do the 1 by 1s and get our matrix. So we're going to do negative 1 times 5, which is going to be negative 5, 2 times negative 4, which is going to be negative 8, and then we're going to have 3 times 2, which is 6. Then our next one, negative 1 times negative 1, is going to be positive 1, 2 times 0 is 0, 3 times 3 is 9. Alright, so then our next row, I want you to do this one by yourself. So you can do 4 times 5, 0 times negative 4, 5 times 2, and so on and so on. So pause the video right here and do the second row. So if you did the first or second row correctly, you would have 20 plus 0 plus 10, and then negative 4, 0, and 15. So lastly, let's add all those numbers together. So now we have negative 5 plus negative 8 plus 6, and negative 5 and negative 8 is going to be negative 13, plus 6 is going to be negative 7. 1 plus 0 plus 9 is 10. 20 plus 0 plus 10 is 30. Negative 4 plus 0 plus 15 is going to be 11. So this would be my final answer. Alright, that's it for today. Have a good day.